Welcome to the Terrible Podcast with your hosts from SteelersDepot.com, where you can find all your latest and greatest Steelers news. It's Dave Bryan and Alex Kozora, always lit, talking Steelers. And now, here's Dave and Alex.
Welcome to the Terrible Podcast, Season 14, Episode 150. He's Dave Bryan. I'm Alex Kozora, SteelersDepot.com. Thanks for being back with us here this Tuesday. Steelers Nation, happy July to everybody. Happy training camp month. Just a couple weeks away, but it is the longest drag to get to that point, Dave. Very quiet on the news cycle front right now. So we will find some things, like always, to talk about, but we're trying to power through these dog days of summer.
Yeah, this is the extra rough part of the off season here, and you get into this first week of July. Obviously, you got July 4th coming up, and probably a lot of people vacationing, and just a whole news cycle at this point is super slow. So you really have to do your best to kind of manufacture some things that you haven't already beat up 17 times already, and we will attempt to do as such today. So going to be a slow week unless we get some kind of unexpected, contract extension news or anything like that. But generally this week in the calendar, specifically July 4th week for the Steelers is normally super duper slow.
Right. So probably would expect, if anything were to occur next week for extension talks, and those would be the Pat Freiermuths, the Najee Harrises, the Cam Haywards, and maybe a surprise or two in there, but we'll talk about that if anything comes up. Dave, let's start off with a study that you had done the other day about Russell Wilson and his deep ball. You always do those great contextualization posts to kind of really, bring the play, literally play by play, to life, to really give the reader a direct viewpoint into something you're talking about. And so I think we've all kind of known still conventionally that Wilson physically is still talented with his arm, can still throw the deep ball. But what were your main takeaways from that study?
I think first and foremost, I just was looking to show that, hey, this guy, for as long as he's been in the league now, what this is going to be is 13th NFL season at the age of 35, and just based off of last year alone, he still has the arm strength to be able to get the football not only down the field but really down the field and in the air of more than 40 yards, and on top of that be able to connect on some of those balls. And boy, does the Steelers offense really need those kind of connections in 2024. If you go back to last year, Alex, specifically when you look at deep ball air yards of 40 or more past the line of scrimmage, the Steelers completed just one of those last year. And Mason Rudolph was the one to do it. That was in, I believe, that week 16 game against the Bengals. I believe that was one of the ones to George Pickens in that game. And that was the only deep air yard ball of 40 yards or more that the Steelers completed. And when you compare that to what Russell Wilson was able to do with the Denver Broncos last season, he completed 6 passes that flew in the air more than or 40 or more yards past your original line of scrimmage. And not only that, he led the entire NFL in that stat, according to Sports Info Solutions. So maybe a lot of people didn't know that. Now, 4 of those 6 that he completed of 40 or more air yards resulted in touchdowns, and that also led the entire NFL in that stat in 2023. He did, however, attempt 16 such long throws, but 10 of those were deemed to be on target by SIS, and 2 of those incompleted passes were even deemed as dropped by the targets on those plays. I didn't get a chance to go pull those up to to see how accurate they were, and just because obviously drops are subjective, but I think SIS does a pretty good job on those overall. Now, I will point out the fact that one of those 6 that Russell Wilson did complete a 40 or more air yards came in. Let's see, what was it? The week 2 game, I believe it was, against the Washington Commanders. One of them was a Hail Mary, so to speak, or it was at the end of the game. It got tipped, it got caught for a touchdown as time expired in that game, and Denver went on to lose that game. But the fact that, here's the thing. He was able to get it down the field in that type of situation, and he did complete it, even though that one probably deserves a bit of an asterisk overall, but it was what it was. Additionally, 3 of those 6 came in that game against the Commanders early in the season, 2 to Marvin Mims, and that one on that Hail Mary to Brandon Johnson. And later on in the season, he had a couple of more to Cortland Sutton, who we've talked about quite a bit this offseason. And the last one of the season went to Marvin Mims in the game against the New England Patriots very late in the season. So just a general takeaway here is the fact that the arm looks good, or looked good last season on Wilson, especially on those balls specifically. While you could put an asterisk on one of those on that Hail Mary there were a couple that were at least deemed as drops that probably seemed like they should have been completed. And he can still get the ball down the field. And man, if he could complete, let's say, 5 or 6 of such tight passes in 2024 as a member of the Steelers, 6 minus 1 last year, that's 5 more. That would be nice to see. And once again, that was only on passes of 40 or more air yards down the field. I would suspect that he fared a lot better on just balls of 20 or more yards down the field than the Steelers did last season. So that's one area of his game that at least from the last season, and probably the last couple seasons with Denver, is exciting to look forward to.
Yeah, when I watched his tape last year, despite all the criticism that he was under fire for in his 2 years with Denver, the tape looked good, and the arm certainly looked good. I mean, it's still very lively. The deep ball has accuracy, placement, timing, and overall strength. I think he can make throws to every level. The accuracy seemed solid to me overall. I mean, it's one thing to have a good arm. That's kind of the arm strength, arm talent is what the vernacular is, but you got to be able to place that ball and layer that ball too. I mean, do you think his arm talent and the overall ability to throw deep, all things considered, is better than what any quarterback had physically last year in Pittsburgh?
Oh yeah, absolutely, without a doubt. I think 1 for 1. Or one for 3, if you will, versus what the Steelers had. Look, I mean, Mason Rudolph can get the football, could get the football down the field, right?
Mm-hmm.
But
I think. Do you think it was better than Mason? I think maybe the placement seemed to be maybe similar. The strength maybe seemed to be a bit better than where Mason was at, but Mason was a good deep ball thrower.
Right. I still think 1 for 1. Look, I think Mason. We have seen Mason throw the football down, now, albeit not a lot, especially prior to last season. But in his earlier years, we saw Mason get it out there a little bit. I think Mason's. The thing that always intrigued me about Mason Rudolph and his deep ball was kind of that delivery of his over the top. Looked a little bit funky at times there, but I think if you just want to look specifically in more recent times here, I think Russell puts it out there better than
Okay.
Mason did.
Okay. Yeah, I would agree with you. But yeah, not even comparing Wilson to anybody, just the overall talent, him to him, it's good. And so that should be, music to George Pickens' ears. And if they can find another outside vertical receiver, there is a lot of speed in this receiver room, despite all the question marks. The one thing we know that they have currently is speed. Calvin Austin, Roman Wilson, Quez Watkins, Scotty Miller, and Pickens is a long strider, glider. Those guys can win vertically, and that should play well with what Wilson is capable of doing.
And look, I mean, you look at just last year alone with Wilson and those receivers that he connected with. I mean, Mims is a talented guy, especially down the field. And Sutton, I think on a few of his. Now, one of those to Mims, I think it was, he didn't have it was a wide open scenario, I think, on that first one that I laid out there. But I mean, the quarterback still has to get it out there, right?
Sure.
Down the field and on target there. So a talented set of receivers kind of overall with Denver there. But I mean, you got a guy like George Pickens that has shown that he can get down the field and make those deep throws. And, Calvin Austin, although it hasn't happened a lot, we've seen him be able to separate and get down the field. And last year, what was that one from was it Pickett in the Raiders game? Pickett to Austin was out there. I don't think that was I think the air yardage on that was something like 38 or something like that. But we have seen Austin be able to get down the field, and we'll obviously see if they add to this receiver room going forward, or you would think a couple of these other guys they have on the roster, a Quez Watkins, maybe even a Van Jefferson should be able to get down the field. Look, if the ball's there and on time, and if the receiver has a step and has a little bit of room, there's no reason. This is the NFL. You're supposed to complete those passes.
Sure. Expectations should be high with Wilson, a veteran quarterback, and these receivers have to step up and make plays. And that starts in training camp. You want to be one of those receivers fighting for a job and win your spot, go catch a couple of those deep passes from Russell Wilson, track the ball in and make the play. You do that, you're probably going to be on this 53 and have some rolling capacity for week 1 against Atlanta. So good study overall, useful, kind of confirmed what I suspected, and to really put that to the tape, mark by mark, was helpful for me.
Right. And for those curious, I think Justin Fields had one such completion last year of 40 or more yards.
Wonder who that was to. Mooney, maybe?
I can pull that up here. Let's see.
Could have been just a random anybody, but my guess, if I had to guess, would have been Darnell Mooney, given his speed.
SIS logged me out here. I'll get it for you here.
Okay. Fields also has a good arm, and I think he throws a nice deep ball overall. It's probably a little less consistent than Wilson in terms of accuracy and placement, but I think there's certainly going to be some wow moments for him this summer. So good information on that, Dave.
Let me see if I can pull this up here for Chicago last year. Justin Fields attempted 9 such passes. He completed 1. That one went to Cole Kmet.
Wow. The tight end.
That was against the Arizona Cardinals. 4 of those 9 were deemed catchable by Sports Info Solutions. 2 of those were deemed on target. And I guess I could filter out real quick how many of those may have been dropped. Let me see if I can get that real quick here. It looks like there were, is that, I didn't have that set at 40. Let me set that at 40 air yards.
I wonder how they define catchable versus on target. I mean, I assume on target means the receiver didn't really have to extend or adjust for the ball, and catchable was he did, but still was in place to make the catch.
Yeah, I'll have to look at some of the notes on Sports Info Solutions there. Looks like there was 1 drop, 2, 3 drops. So let me see. I don't have the breakdown if all these came from Justin Fields, so I would imagine most of them did. I told you there were 9 in total, though, right?
Yes.
and this is showing 6, 9, 12 total targets here. So some of these might not have been, or definitely all these weren't from Fields, but it shows there were 3 drops to some degree here.
Okay. Yeah, he had got that thumb injury and they had to put in, was it Tyson? How was his last name? Bagnet, something like that he started 4 games or so. But I'm sure Fields was probably hurt a little bit by some drops last year.
Right.
All right, Dave, moving on. Let's talk Najee Harris here for a second and focusing on field performance here in 2024. You and I have had some articles on rushing yards and some projections. You've got some odds makers putting some curiously really low conservative rushing yard lines on Najee and also Jaylen Warren. And for me, I was just kind of poking around when it's just, dry time of the offseason. I usually just go on Pro Football Reference and just kind of click around. I know you do as well, just to see what might pop up. And it doesn't mean much, but I was looking at where Najee Harris ranks in the all-time Steelers history leaderboard in rushing yards. And if he rushes for something like 730 yards this year, he'll be the 6th leading rusher in Steelers history all time. And if he rushes for like 1,150 yards, he'll be 5th all time. It's just kind of crazy to think about a guy that we just talked about being drafted a couple years ago could be the 5th leading all-time rusher in history for Pittsburgh if he gets to, it's like 1,130 yards or so. Let's start with your post, though. You had written that, was it Bet MGM had put a over-under on him of, what was it, like 730 yards or so?
No, it was, let's see, and this was their update as of June 24th. I have not, since I wrote this the other night, I think on Sunday, I've not seen if they have updated yet. These will obviously continue to be updated as we get closer to the season. I'll be interested to see how much the line moves. I would imagine a lot of people probably hammering the over on these. They have Najee Harris rushing yards over under at 775.5 yards for 2024. And boy, I understand the fact that people are probably expecting Jaylen Warren to play even more this year and get even more touches. But even so, and we're talking about a guy in Najee Harris that hasn't missed a game yet, right? 775.5 rushing yards for 2024 sure seems like a low bar to clear, even if Jaylen has an uptick in carries.
Oh, it does for sure. I mean, I guess the assumption is maybe if Harris gets hurt and how many running backs play out the entire season, but Harris has, as you just pointed out, played in all 17 games throughout his 3 NFL seasons. So just on that alone, if he can do that, it's hard to not rush for at least 800 or so yards. So, I mean, even assuming that Warren will continue this split, and he will, Harris should still be the technical starter and the lead back, getting the majority of the carries overall. So just on those facts alone, with even playing 16 games, I mean, it's with this revamped offensive line, this commitment to the run game under Arthur Smith, and just the investments in how Pittsburgh has built this team inside out offensively, it's hard to see Harris not hitting 1,000 yards yet again.
And Caesar Sportsbook also has an early line out on Najee Harris as well, too, on an over and under. And theirs is 50 yards higher than BetMGM's at 825.5. Even that, I would, I'd easily be inclined to take the over on, because once again, we're talking about a guy in Najee Harris that has 3 consecutive 1,000-yard seasons to his credit. And I mean, even if he was to miss a game or two, you would think, man, surely he could clear 825.5. But these are early odds, and they will obviously move based on how people bet on them. And I would imagine most people that would bet that would probably take the over, which will in turn move the over under line up. But it caught me by surprise to see both those numbers that low.
Harris needs 1,113 yards to pass John Henry Johnson for 5th all-time in rushing yards in Pittsburgh Steelers history. The great and forgotten John Henry Johnson, probably best known for his time in the $1 million backfield at San Francisco, but Pittsburgh's first 1,000-yard rusher in the 60s. So he needs 1,113 yards to do so. How likely is that to occur, Dave? He's done that once, Harris has, in his career already.
That number might be tough to get, especially if Jaylen Warren gets the uptick in carries that many speculate that he'll do. I see. How far over 1,100 is that? Did you say
1,113 yards?
Ooh, that's a tough one. I like his chances of cracking the 1,000-yard mark. I don't know how much more I'd be willing to bet he'd go over that, though.
If he gets about the same number of carries as last year, at 255 last year, I'll give him 260 this year with a stronger commitment and ability to run the ball, especially early. He needs to average essentially 4.3 yards per carry. He had 4.1 or so last year. I think it's doable with a better offensive line. I know he's not going to rip off the 60-yard runs, which hurts that mission, but I think it's entirely achievable.
Yeah, I do as well. But I think when you get in closer to maybe the 1,200 or 1,300 mark, that's when it really becomes dicey with him. Look, to his credit, coming out of Alabama, he wasn't really known as the explosive 20-yard or more runner, at least percentage-wise, based on carries. And the last couple of years, he's done a pretty decent job of overall stacking a few more explosive runs. But like you said, are we likely to see those long runs that Jaylen Warren has shown, the double explosive, the triple explosive? Probably not. But I like his chances of being able to pop up another 7, 8, 9, 20-yard runs.
Yeah, again, it was funny last year. Technically, he's hitting those explosive run markers. He had 6 or 7 last year, but his long was 25. But he finished with 1,035 yards last year. I mean, it's 80 away from that 1,113 number to shoot for. So with just the more consistent run game, especially early in the season, I think people kind of forget the last 2 years Pittsburgh has ended the year running the ball well. They have started the year running the ball miserably. And Pittsburgh must get off the faster starts with its run game this year.
Absolutely, they should. Absolutely, they should. I'm curious to how many people listening today would not take the over on either one of those two numbers, the 775.5 or the slightly higher one from Caesars at 825.5. If you are in that category, shoot an email to theterriblepodcast@gmail.com as to why you think Najee Harris might be under either one of those numbers.
Yeah, I think it'll be a very small minority of people that would take the under on that. Harris had about 63% of the carries between him and Warren last year. Do you expect that split to be the same, to change in either direction? You seem to hint that the Warren may eat into that total sum.
I mean, I could see that happening. To what percent? I mean, do I think it's going to be a 50-50 split if both those guys are healthy? No. But I could see something like a 60-40 split.
Okay, so a minor change there. So if we had 404 carries between the two of them, again, 60% of that would be for Najee, 242. So he'd lose about 13 carries.
Yeah, that's plausible.
Yeah, I think 60-40. I mean, it'll ebb and flow based on per game. I know Arthur Smith can sometimes be a little funny about how he distributes carries. We'll see how much, if any, Patterson gets involved. But I think 60-40 is a good base point to work from.
All right, maybe an even more interesting conversation is the Jaylen Warren now over under number. Now Caesars, at least the last time I looked, does not have a number on him, but BetMGM does, and that as of end of June was 590.5 yards as the over under mark for that.
Yeah, again, I'm going to take the over on this run game for Pittsburgh. I'm confident in it. The investments, if you assume that Frazier and Fautanu start, even if they don't, Dan Moore, I think is a better run blocker than people give him credit for, and just the overall commitment to this running game with more continuity. Third year for a lot of these guys. James Daniels, second year for Broderick Jones, second year for Sayed Malu. Some of those growing pains you kind of move past. He hopefully hit the ground running much much faster this year. So I'm really confident in this run game.
Yeah, and let's see. Warren, first 2 seasons, has rushed for 379 and 784 yards, respectively. And let's see, the 784 yardage total in 2023 came via 149 touches, and obviously had a couple of nice explosives in there as well too. But even so, it would be hard not to advise people, assuming they can still get that 590.5 over under number, to hammer the over on that.
Pittsburgh was 9th in rushing attempts last year. Do they hit top 5? Will they be a top 5 rushing team in just pure carries?
If things go positively for them and the way that we think that they want to run this offense and run it successfully, they should be in the top 5.
I agree. I think they will. I think under Arthur Smith, that's his MO. And even the Falcons last year, they were 3rd in rushes last season, and they were not a good team. They were playing from behind. So I think Pittsburgh will and has aspirations to at the least be top 5.
All right. So once again, these are early lines. These will move. It will be interesting, however, to see what the week 1 lines on both these guys are, assuming both of them stay healthy the rest of the summer here.
Just to mention, it had a video go up this morning talking about the inside linebacker position for Pittsburgh. And obviously, rightfully so, a lot of buzz on the big acquisitions made this offseason and Patrick Queen in for agency, and then drafting Peyton Wilson in the 3rd round, a first-round talent who fell due to age and medical concerns. But my focus here was on Elandon Roberts, who I thought just played some really excellent football last year. And Pittsburgh needed that given all the injuries they encountered to Cole Holcomb, to Quan Alexander, and you're going through this just kind of mass unit of guys off the street, of bringing Miles Jack out of retirement and signing Michael Walker off the practice squad of I think what Atlanta it was, and even having Blake Martinez for a moment or two. But Roberts, to me, was really excellent, even in coverage. I thought he graded out well on my charting, and just watching him on tape, I forgot about that breakup he had on Dalton Kincaid in the wild card game, and this corner route 40 yards downfield, he ran with Kincaid, a first-round pick, athletic move tight end, and broke the pass up. So, I know there's so much buzz on what Queen can offer, what Wilson can offer. I just don't want people to forget about what Roberts did offer this team last year and what he can do in 2024.
I think even going into last season, knowing what we knew about him at the time, which, I mean, obviously he had really decent tape, going into last season, the position that he was put into because of all the injuries and all that occurred. And obviously he was dinged up himself. Look, there was that one game we thought there was no way in hell he was going to play, right?
The Patriots game.
And he ended up powering through that. I think he overachieved.
Yeah, I think so too. I mean, I think the book on him when he got signed was thumper, 2-down guy, can stuff the run, which he did, but he showed he can cover as well. Now, is he going to be the most athletic cover guy in football? No, he's not Fred Warner. He's not Roquan Smith, but he's got good zone eyes. He shows that physicality in coverage. He can tackle in space in his hook zone and come downhill and prevent yak. And again, I mean, he showed he could turn and run in moments as well. That play on Kincaid in that wildcard game was elite. I mean, that's as good of a coverage play as you're going to see in terms of the angle, the tracking, the timing, the finish. So this is a guy that showed I think he can be more than just a pure thumper downhill kind of a guy.
Yeah, I agree. And obviously later on in the show, we're going to be rolling through more of my 90 and 30 series and talking about a lot of players. I don't know if Cole Holcomb will be in today's group of players. I haven't looked at how many we're going to cover today, but he was recently in one of the more recent posts that I did. And when you get to, dissecting kind of the outlook for Cole Holcomb, which obviously a lot of it's going to be dependent. Is he physically 100% come the start of the regular season? We'll have to watch that aspect of it. But let's assume Cole Holcomb's ready to go by week 1 of the season. It still makes his outlook, because of the addition of Patrick Queen, because of the way Elandon Roberts played in this defense last year, because of this team going out and drafting Peyton Wilson this year, it's hard to get a firm grasp on the outlook of Cole Holcomb, right?
It is. It's hard to get a firm grasp on the roles anyone outside of Queen will hold. Queen, you assume, will be the 3-down all situations guy for his talent and the money they're paying him. I mean, I think Roberts would start the year off in at the least base and probably a lot of your nickel packages early. Peyton Wilson, it's just going to depend on how he looks in camp. I mean, there's certainly a chance to play, and if he looks good, he should and he will. And then, yeah, how does Holcomb fit in on top of that? Again, good problem to have for Pittsburgh, considering the injuries that they encountered last year and could encounter in 2024. They certainly utilized and enjoyed that 3-man rotation they had when the group was healthy last year of Holcomb, Alexander, and Roberts. You got 4 guys in there now. So it is one of those underrated questions about how Pittsburgh will mix and match.
Let's again assume Cole Holcomb's ready to go come the start of the season, and let's assume that the rest of the linebacking core is ready to roll. Obviously, Patrick Queen is not going to be out there on special teams, right? And you would think Elandon Roberts at his age is not going to be out there either, right? Obviously, Peyton Wilson will be out there if he's dressed for games, which we expect him to be. And why wouldn't he be, especially if, at a minimum, because of what he can give you on special teams? I guess the big question is if Holcomb is ready to go week 1 and he does dress, does that mean special teams in his future?
I don't know. I really don't, to be honest with you. I mean, there is a little less running if you're on kick coverage. You don't have to sprint 40 yards, which maybe just helps everybody in general. Mark Robinson will, assuming he's active and has a hat. I really don't. I don't know. I guess you'll see Roberts doing some of it. He did some of it last year, and he's got that thumper hitter mentality you can tackle that you want on teams. So I wouldn't discount Roberts either.
All right. So if you dress just those top 4, I mean, are you going to see both Roberts and Holcomb kind of split some special teams duties, maybe?
I don't know if Holcomb will, to be honest with you. I think Roberts would be more likely to do so than Holcomb. I think he just has more of a background there. I think the one value you have this year is that both your backup outside linebackers can do it, and Herbig, and let's assume Jeremiah Moonen takes that number 4 spot, whereas last year you had Herbig and Marcus Golden, and Golden was not a special teams guy. He's 33, has never done it really in his career, was not an asset there. So, maybe you can be one less at inside linebacker and be one heavier at outside linebacker, which will help even out the numbers.
Okay. I guess my main point here this early on in the offseason for a July 2nd podcast is it's interesting to it's hard to kind of carve out an outlook for Cole Holcomb as we sit here today. And obviously a lot of that's tied to his injury, but even if fully healthy come week 1, he's one of the more difficult guys that you expect to be on the 53-man roster to write up an outlook for.
As you said, assume Holcomb is healthy and able to play week 1. Walk me through who's going to be in your base 3-4 packages, who will be in your nickel packages, and who will be in your dime package in terms of your inside linebackers.
Yeah, that once again, that's where it gets extremely tough,
right?
Because
and I would expect it to be a rotation. I don't think it's going to be this clean. You do this, you do that, you do this.
Yeah, look, I mean, you could theoretically see those top 4 guys. I mean, obviously Patrick Queen's going to be out there. I mean, that's a given. It's just what does that? Yeah, I mean, it's a tough question to answer, Alex, because how quickly can Peyton Wilson progress enough to even at least get himself in maybe one package? And how plausible is that? I mean, I think as we sit here right now, it's plausible. I mean, I would not be surprised either way if you got into week 1, they say, look, just worry about special teams. It's your first NFL game. We don't want you overthinking any of this. We got enough people to throw out there. So, I mean, it's super plausible that you get to week 1 and all Peyton Wilson is playing special teams. I think you would agree with that, right?
Sure. That's plausible. Yeah.
But when you got into week 2, 3, 4, you might want to get him out there in a dime something, albeit might be 4 snaps a game. And then you got a guy like Elandon Roberts. You know what he can do if he's the second linebacker on the field as far as playing downhill. I mean, I don't want to take anything away from Cole Holcomb, because I think Cole Holcomb played well in his action last year as far as, going downhill and against the run. So but who would you rather in early run down situations being on the field alongside Patrick Queen?
Roberts. I would take Roberts based on how things stand right now. So yeah, it's obviously a difficult question to answer, and it goes back to, there will be rotations where you're going to mix and match, and so it may be where you start the game with Roberts and Queen in base, and then every third series Holcomb gets put in there, and ditto with Wilson and nickel packages. Really, it just depends on those variables for Holcomb, his health and recovery, and how he looks post-injury. That's the other factor too. Okay, he's healthy, but how well can he move? Can he do the same things he could pre-injury? Because it was a very serious knee injury that he encountered last year. For Wilson, just how quickly can he pick things up and make plays, and how quickly can you trust him? That's going to be the thing for those off-ball linebackers. Can you trust this guy? If you can, you're going to play him because the talent is top level. If not, then you're going to have to slow roll him on more of a special teams focused role. So those are just two variables in camp that this team will have to monitor and watch and decide for when camp breaks.
Look, if all four of those guys are healthy and ready to go come week one, that's a good problem to have, especially coming out of the problems that this Steve, you mentioned Blake Martinez. Did that really happen?
I know.
You're kidding me, right? That never
The fever
happened,
dream.
right? But that would be a good problem to have for us to sit here and say, well, you know what? Holcomb played here. Roberts played these snaps. That'll be something fun to track, assuming all four of them get on the field.
Yeah, so just wanted to talk about that. Just wanted to mention, don't forget about Elandon Roberts, because his play last year was really good and really important and valuable to this team. All right, Dave, it is the song that never ends, and so we'll keep singing it. Brandon Aiyuk, he knows how to market himself and put himself here in the headlines, especially during the quiet time of the year, specifically requesting to go on the Pivot podcast with former Steeler Ryan Clark, also Fred Taylor, Channing Crowder, to discuss his future. He did say, when directly asked, and I appreciate the question, I think it was from Ryan Clark, he said, Clark did, who do you think you'll play for in 2024? And Aiyuk, to be clear, said he'll probably be playing for the 49ers. But if not San Francisco, he said he thinks he'll play for the Washington Commanders, who would reunite with him with his teammate or former teammate at Arizona State and friend quarterback Jaylen Daniels. And if not the Commanders, then he did say he thinks he'd play for the Steelers. So the order is 49ers, Commanders, Steelers. But of course, with us talking so much about Aiyuk, the potential to hear him actually say the word Steelers and mention that as a possibility is going to be notable. So here we are yet again talking about it.
What's that meme of the SpongeBob character pointing with the hat on saying Steeler?
Oh yeah.
A lot of people.
I think it's a Squidward. Yeah.
Squidward. Okay, my apologies.
It's the SpongeBob show. It was Squidward.
Okay.
We're getting in the weeds here.
Look, I don't blame him for posturing the way that he did, and what a great time of the offseason for him to go on there and to get that relief. That happened on Friday, right?
The episode aired Friday, yes.
Right. And it was recorded, I think, maybe a week or so before that.
I think it was before his meeting with the team. That was last Monday, I believe. Yeah.
Okay. What a perfect time to drop that to get the full exposure on. My thoughts on this hasn't changed other than to, especially when it comes to the Steelers. I would, as I've said several times, I'm not going to spend a lot of time on it. The big storyline here wouldn't actually, in my opinion, be in the Steelers trading for Aiyuk. It would be the contract that they gave him after the fact. End of story. That to me is where the surprise would come in all this. And thus, I've given up kind of hope on that happening with Aiyuk for several weeks, if not a couple of months now at that aspect. I tell you what, if he does not, if he ends up getting traded by the 49ers, I could really see it being the Washington Commanders. He really feels like he really would like to go there, although he doesn't get to say on where he goes. But I would imagine the Commanders would be one of the teams interested in him if indeed he is for sale, so to speak, there. So, but
doesn't he kind of get a say? Because if you're trading for him, you almost have to extend him. And in that regard, he gets a say. So I know your point, like literally he doesn't get a say, but I think he kind of really does get to dictate where he goes.
Right. Because any team that's going to trade for him is going to want to work out the contract extension and get permission and do all that beforehand. And he
Right.
could, even if, let's say the Steelers were given permission to talk to him to work out the kind of deal. If multiple teams are in this, I would suspect, at least from the guaranteed money aspect, the Steelers would come in last place.
With the way they structure deals.
Right. So within that, I would like the Commanders' chances if indeed they were a team that was in play and given the ability to talk to them and yada, yada.
Not to make this Commanders Depot, but it's a boring July 2nd, Tuesday. What is the Commanders cap situation? Could they assume Aiyuk's contract today? Or would this be one of those things where they maybe restructure a contract that becomes one of those Highsmith draft time signs of, okay, maybe they're about to make a move?
Let's see. According to the NFLPA this morning, they have a paltry $37 million. 304,146 in salary cap space. I think they can make it work.
Don't have to restructure. Okay. I was hoping they were really up against the cap, or maybe we get that smoke signal that goes up, but alas, does not appear to be the case.
In fact, how many teams have more cap space than they do right now?
I'm guessing very few.
New England's got 44.1 million. So it looks like only the Patriots, according to the NFLPA right now, have more salary cap space than the Washington Commanders.
Were the Commanders one of those 5 teams like Pittsburgh that weren't spending much cash this year? I forget the teams you said. It was like Denver, Pittsburgh. I forget the other teams you mentioned. But they almost have to be.
Yeah. I'd have to pull it up here, but it seems like Washington was down at the bottom there.
They did trade for Aiyuk. We mentioned this a little bit last week, but Terry McLaurin's going to say, pay me and pay me right now. And they have the cap space to do so. So that'd be a very interesting dynamic to watch.
Mm-hmm.
Anyway, so that's the word on that. Also, I mentioned on Friday's show, he was wearing Aiyuk was a Pirates hat. He had told TMZ that the Pirates had given him the hat. So the Pirates are maybe doing their part in trying to convince Aiyuk to come to Pittsburgh. Will it work? Doubt it, but it's out there.
Do you think it was just an accident, though, that he's got that? I mean,
no,
it's all contrived. At least I would make it as I want as. Here's the thing: how active was he on social media before all this offseason? It seemed like he kind of came out of nowhere, especially around the time where he the whole Tomlin lookalike thing. And look, I don't sit there and monitor 49ers players or anything like that. But it seemed like he had a very low social media profile before all this offseason. And whatever ends up happening here with him, I don't know, maybe he likes all the attention, but I could see it going back to the way it was. You want all this stuff out there. You want people talking about you. You want the 49ers to feel like they're up against it here.
Sure. Yeah. My recollection is the 49ers guys had said around that time earlier this offseason was that he almost never posted on social media. And so when he first started, it was notable because he never posts and he actually was active, and now it's a continual thing. So 100%, this is all on purpose, a planned thing. And this is how players send messages. In the old days, it was holdouts before social media, before the fines and penalties. If you did hold out, nowadays no one holds out. They hold in and they go on social media and they play that game, which is fine, right? Totally fair, totally in bounds. But this is all definitely intentional and leverage attempts by Brandon Aiyuk, and more power to him.
All right, we got our Brandon Aiyuk quota in.
Cross that off there. Your bingo card, although it's really become the free space. But when he says he thinks he'd come to Pittsburgh, that is certainly worth talking about. We've talked about far less interesting Aiyuk-related things on the podcast whenever he actually says the word Steelers and Ryan Clark tries to convince him to come to Pittsburgh. That was a good sales pitch. We'll see if it works. But again, he thinks he'll stay in San Francisco, but money talks, and we'll see what happens. All right, Dave. Let's go to your 90 and 30 now. I'm trying to think about where we have to pick up. I believe it's Jaylen, Elliott, Troy Polamalu, and Brain Foko. Am I correct on that?
Let's see. The last 6 we talked about in the last podcast were Coletto, Cook, Copeland, Daniels, Edwards, and Deshaun Elliott.
Okay, so that'll be the other Elliott, Jaylen Elliott, the safety, futures contract, veteran, signed mid-camp last year when injury struck, bounced on and off Pittsburgh's practice squad. changed jersey numbers a couple of times last year and this year. And obviously, even with Trenton Thompson being waived, still a tough path for Elliott. Maybe special teams, more likely practice squad.
Yeah, that's where I am with him. He does have a little bit of position flexibility at the safety position, even though I think it's going to be very tough for him to make the Steelers 53-man roster out of camp. Even so, he does have some limited NFL playing experience to go along with special teams snaps. Here's what I'm expecting, assuming he sticks on the roster all summer. I think you'll see quite a bit of him during the preseason here, in the 3 preseason games, and with him already having logged a little bit of practice squad time around the NFL, I think he's instantly a candidate to maybe hang around in Pittsburgh after the final round of cuts and possibly make the practice squad.
I agree. He played, 8 games for, I think, the Lions a couple years back, so there's a bit of experience there. He's the Ryan McCullum of the Steelers defense, kind of cup of coffee guy that has some experience and is most likely a practice squad type. So that's the story on Jaylen Elliott. Troy Fautanu, first-round pick, appears to be right tackle. The question is, will he be this team's starting right tackle?
Yeah, the only real outlook when it comes to him is obviously he's going to get on the field at some point during his rookie season. Can it be week 1? And if it is week 1, can it be at right tackle so you can get Broderick Jones flipped over to the other side there? All the reports, at least coming out of football in the short season, seem to indicate that he's going to get every opportunity whatsoever to be the starting right tackle week 1, and that's the only real mystery when it comes to him, in my opinion.
Walk me through the path of how he actually becomes a starting right tackle. What does he have to do? What does he have to show this team to start week 1?
That he's better than Dan Moore Jr.
Okay. Specifically, what does he have to do to do that?
I just think he has to have a full grasp of the offense, an understanding that he's okay with the muscle memory aspect of it. And look, even though he was predominantly a left tackle in college at Washington, you go back to the high school days, and he it's not entirely foreign to him on that side. I think just understanding things when people come that you don't expect them to come in some blitz situations, just showing the knowledge to not get your quarterback killed, those kind of instances. I think out in space he's going to be fine. I think those long arms of him, even though he's just undersized in total length as far as the height goes, he makes up for it in the arm length there. I don't think the bar is very high overall when it comes to Dan Moore Jr., especially when it comes to right side, because even Dan Moore doesn't sound like Dan Moore thinks that Dan Moore can play on the right side there. So the bar's not very high. I don't view it overall. He's just got to have the confidence of the coaching staff that he knows what he's doing over there.
I agree. Is it possible, even if the camp battle in the reporting indicates that it will be Moore versus Fautanu on the right side, but if Fautanu struggles a lot, could they just reverse course and put Broderick Jones back at right tackle and then Moore at left tackle to begin the year? I mean, is that still on the table?
I mean, I think you got to further. Why is he so poor on one side as opposed to the other? What I would need more info of what he's exactly struggling at. Is it just the muscle memory, the coming out of the stance? He just looks more fluid on the left side as opposed to, or he looks less fluid just overall on the right side. I mean, there's layers to that, I think.
But regardless, if he loses, if he's not deemed ready to start for whatever reason, what is the team's plan then? Would it be to put, and we're all guessing, but would it be to put Dan Moore at right tackle and start him there? Or would they move Moore back to left tackle and then Jones back to right tackle?
I can't see any scenario. I mean, it's hard to imagine Dan Moore starting week 1 at right tackle. End of story. Barring injury, barring some injuries or whatever. It's. I mean, the guy has even said it. It'd be one thing if the guy said, "Yeah, I think I can handle this, no problem." I mean, and Mike Tomlin said last year, there's no signs that point anywhere to the coaching staff or even the player feeling confident of Dan Moore being on the right side.
But he may battle Fautanu for that spot this summer. That's what Mark Cavalli at least believes, which I think certainly would give Fautanu the edge, and it would make it harder for him to lose the job. But if he just looked like a disaster, which I don't think will happen, but if it did, then I think you probably move more back to left tackle and Jones back to right tackle.
Right.
That's my view of it. But to go back to the question, what does he have to do? I think work independent hands. It's always a big thing under Pat Meyer. Just be comfortable with his hand placement, his punch. Be able to work, these zone blocks, which he has the athleticism to do, but just being able to reach and combo and get to the second level, cut off defensive lineman at the first level. That's going to be important for him. And as you said, just be comfortable with his muscle memory and just his technique, flipping over from that left to right side. If that's kind of the first, if he can do that, if he can get comfortable, he'll play to his talent. He'll look good. He'll start. It just, can he get comfortable in short order? That's going to be the challenge for him.
Sure. Agreed.
All right, and then last on that list is Braden Fehoko, nose tackle, brought back on the practice squad for most of last year. Was up for one game, but did not play. Run stuffer. That's he does that job well, but that's all he can really do for this team right now.
It really feels like he needs something to happen ahead of him on the depth chart with, per se, a Montravius Adams or something like that. Or, Montravius either getting injured or Montravius just falling off the cliff completely. It just seems like this is a tough road from where we sit right now for a guy like Fehoko. More, in my opinion, he's a perfect practice squad candidate again here, and anything other than that, I think it would be a result of something happening that's unfortunate for the Steelers.
I agree. He had a good camp last year. He did get to have the benefit of kind of pushing Kendrick Green around some, but he can stuff the run. He did look really good in run session. There's just no pass rush juice to his game. He's a pure base 3-4 Okie front nose tackle. And when you have other guys ahead of him that can hopefully offer more versatility and more pass rush ability, it's a hard road for Fehoko. He was that odd man out last year when Pittsburgh kept 7 defensive linemen. They're more likely to keep 6 this year. Even if they keep 7, it's tough for a third string nose tackle that's so limited. So like the guy, good practice squad player, hard to see that path to the 53 barring injury.
Tough road for sure. Looking more like practice squad.
All right, Dave, Justin Fields is next, and we're going to have long conversations about him during training camp, our own eyes, the media buzz that'll surround him in this quarterback situation. So, there'll be a lot to unpack once July 25th rolls around here in a couple of weeks. But I think he'll have a good summer. I think he'll look good. I think he'll make plays as number 2 quarterback against backup defenses in practice and preseason. I think it will create buzz, but ultimately, I'm still highly confident Russell Wilson will be this team's week 1 starter.
Yeah, I think, as we've mentioned several times, I think Russell Wilson would just really have to lose this job in more ways than just one, for him not to start week 1 or get injured, for him to not be the team's week 1 starter. Obviously, the expectation then would be for Fields to be the open the season as the backup.
For Fields himself, what does he have to do individually to show progress? It's just kind of, it's a lot of things, I know, but is it getting the ball out quicker? Is it just making cleaner decisions? What does he have to show to indicate that he's making strides as an NFL quarterback?
Yeah, it'd be interesting to see with the footwork, because there's been some talk about kind of that footwork changing that last year and going back to the original footwork, and obviously playing within structure and playing within structure quickly, getting the football out and just making good decisions and those sort of things. It would be it won't be a shock if we come out of the preseason thinking, oh man, what a preseason Justin Fields had, right?
Absolutely. I've talked about it a lot and will continue to say so. I think he'll have some wild plays going against those backups, those rookies, those more journeyman types when Fields physically is as talented as maybe any quarterback in football, just based off physical traits alone. I think the mission for Fields this summer, to steal the Tomlin phrase, is do the routine things routinely. That's going to be key for him. Be accurate all the time, consistent with your ball placement, underneath vertically, hit that, gimme check down, hit that throw in the flat, don't overshoot it. Take what the defense gives you when it's there. Just do the little things, be detailed, and all the fundamental aspects of quarterback play. If you can do that, and then of course with just the natural physical gifts that he has, he'll be a really promising NFL quarterback. But do the routine things routinely, Justin Fields.
Agreed.
All right, moving on now to Joey Fisher, the offensive guard from Shepherd, who got signed. He was in San Francisco's camp last year, came over to Pittsburgh's practice squad right around week 1. Talked about him some. I think last show we were talking about some of the backup linemen with Anderson Hardy and Devery Hamilton. Fisher was a tackle in college, kicking inside. He's a road grader. He's a mauler, old school throwback type of player. We'll see how he fits in this more zone-based system. If it works well, he did go to San Francisco, so maybe there's some zone fit affinity there, but he is definitely a good run blocker. Can he pass protect is my question.
Yeah, and obviously at Shepherd University mostly played tackle, and if you go back to how the 49ers used him last year during the preseason, he logged just 37 total offensive snaps. All of them came at left guard because of his, and he measured in at his pro day a couple years ago at 6'0", 296 pounds with 32-inch arms. He does have big hands at 10-inch there, but all signs kind of point to him probably getting looks at guard this summer, and that's an extremely tough road for him. I think I think if he stays on this offseason roster all summer, that in and of itself is going to be an accomplishment for Joey Fisher. Second, going to be interesting to see if he does get multiple position work during the preseason games, and what does that look like? All told, he could have the best camp preseason imaginable for a guy in his position right now. It's still going to be incredibly tough for him, next to damn near impossible for him to make the 53-man roster. So I think he's just working himself to see if he can maybe stick around as a practice squad guy.
Yeah, it's tough with so many guards in front of him. Of course, your starters and say Malu and Daniels. You got Nate Herbig. You got Mason McCormick. You have Spencer Anderson seems to be settling in at guard as well. Just numbers, game, the math of it all is going to be tough. We'll see if Anderson Hardy plays guard or not. I want to see Fisher in pass pro. The good news is he was on the practice squad last year. The Pat Meyer system's not unfamiliar to him, but some of those on-body pass sets, being more aggressive for kind of a bigger, stronger guy. Can he move? Can he punch? Can he be able to slide? When you take some of those more aggressive or flatter sets, those typically get some of those more mauling type of guards in trouble. I want to see that with Fisher. I want to see that with McCormick. And he's not really taken those live reps in quite some time since last summer in his rookie training camp with the 49ers. So when it comes to the guards, I always want to watch their pass protection under Pat Meyer.
Okay.
And then finally here in this segment, although I think we should probably do one more 90 and 30 to slower show and only doing 2 a week right now, but Des Fitzpatrick, wide receiver, kind of a sleeper. I mean, I've touted him some. He earned his keep last year with a really strong back half of training camp as a special teams coverage guy. Did a great job as a gunner, downing punts, making tackles. That earned his practice squad spot. With the muddiness at wide receiver, and Fitzpatrick will offer very little as an actual wide receiver. He had a couple of catches I think with Tennessee early in his career, but if he makes his team, it will be almost certainly through a special teams path. But when you have that leg up, that advantage where guys like Calvin Austin and Quez Watkins and Scotty Miller don't have that kind of background, for a team like Pittsburgh that lost both their starting gunners and Miles Boykin, James Pierre, there is a real path for Fitzpatrick to make this team as a number 5, number 6 wide receiver.
Yeah, sneaky guy here in the wide receiver room. He's got draft pedigree overall as a former 2021 fourth-round draft pick with the Tennessee Titans. He started and ended the 2020 what was it last year? He started and ended the season on the practice squad, right?
Yep.
Or no, yeah, that's correct. And then re-signed a futures contract during the offseason here. So he's got some familiarity, at least with the Steelers. He hasn't played a lot of NFL snaps in the NFL in his first 2 seasons. 104 offensive snaps, 9 more on special teams, just 5 receptions for 49 yards and a touchdown. It's hard to, with so few special team snaps, it's hard to get a gauge on him overall, but I mean, he's got some of the traits and the size, I think, and he could be a guy that sticks out in some of these preseason games. He's going to have to catch Danny Smith's eye, regardless of what happens ahead of him on the depth chart, if he wants any chance whatsoever to make the 53. But you've got guys also on this roster right now, in Van Jefferson and Quez Watkins, who aren't really known for their special teams abilities right now. So if those guys aren't able to give you what you want in the wide receiver room, and you can get kind of the equivalent of that out of Fitzpatrick, and Fitzpatrick gives you something in the special teams category, I wouldn't bet any money on it, I'll tell you that, but he could be a sneaky guy in play here.
And I think he caught Danny Smith's eye last summer. And I'm just pulling up the PFF charting on his reps last summer with Pittsburgh. He had 27 snaps on special teams for 3 games. That's a pretty solid number when they have a 90-man roster and guys rotate. You're not playing the entire game on a unit. And again, he made plays downing punts and making tackles. So yeah, there's something different. There's a different vibe and flair of what he offers than just kind of being your traditional receiver or the speed guy or whatever archetype receiver you want to talk about. So that's going to give him a different path, different way to make this team. Will he do it? It's still not going to be easy, but I can see the road to becoming a starting gunner. That's going to be his mission. That's what Patrick's saying. I have to be a starting gunner for this team. If I do, of course, I'm making the roster. I'm earning my keep. The jobs are there for the taking. It'll be him. It'll be Corey Trice. It'll be Darius Rush, whoever else gets put into the mix there. But he's got to see those spots being wide open and saying, yeah, I'm not going to start as a receiver, obviously, but I can start on special teams, and that's how I survive in advance.
Boy, if you make some big plays as a gunner or whatnot, and force a turnover or two, or a couple of big sticks or whatnot, get down the field and all like that, Mike Tomlin's not opposed to finding a way to get those guys wedged into the 53.
Yeah, there's so many examples of that. Tomlin era, that was Arnaz Battle, right? Arnaz Battle, was he a Steeler in Tomlin's era?
Well, I think more recently, obviously, you got the Stephon Logans, you got the Roosevelt Nicks,
right.
You got you go down the
Boykin,
list on
last 2 years.
You can go down the list of some of these guys that Darius Hayward-Bay. I mean,
right.
You've wide receivers specifically. You've got guys that have stuck out. So it's plausible. Realistically, you're probably looking at a guy battling for a practice squad spot.
Yeah, and Battle was 2010, 2011 in Pittsburgh. Yeah, that was a very odd pull by me to mention the guy way back when. You gave more better recent examples, but there was a path there for Fitzpatrick. All right, let's do 3 more here, Dave. Minkah Fitzpatrick, the other more known Minkah Fitzpatrick. Fitzpatrick are the two guys there. Going back to Minkah Ball being a free safety, we've talked about him several times already, but I think Minkah can go back to being Minkah in 2024.
Yeah, look, I mean, there's the outlook's kind of easy when it comes to Minkah, right? Just hey, stay on the field. Unfortunate injuries last year with both hamstring and
knee. I think it was knee in the Colts game.
Knee later in the season there. He played just 550 regular season snaps on defense in 2023. That's really just half a season. Obviously, we've had all the Minkah Ball comments. We've had the coaching staff talk about, hey, we agree. He probably deserves to be tied to the post a lot more, be able to rotate down. If assuming all these things happen, the health and the usage on defense, I mean, there's no reason to think that Minkah can't get back to that all-pro form that he's had, the couple years prior to that. And that means numerous takeaways. And look, I mean, what a great trade-off that would be to get Minkah back making plays on the defense and not needing to make as many tackles as he has had in previous years.
More takeaways, fewer tackles. Put that on a bumper sticker and sign me up.
Yep.
Zach Frazier. Next, the question is the rookie 2nd-round pick from West Virginia. Will he be this team's starting center? We assume he will, but he still has to earn that job. He's still fighting a veteran in Nate Herbig, and so I don't want to put it in pen that Frazier will start. So what do you think Frazier has to do to make that first step and be this team's starting center week 1 at Atlanta?
Not be Kendrick Green, who was a
okay.
week 1 start. Look, this is the same team that rolled Kendrick Green out his rookie year, right?
Mm-hmm.
So don't be on the ground. Just all that playing time that he had in college. I mean, you've got a very experienced guy here, smart. He should be able to pick all this up real quick. Barring him getting dinged and just being looking disaster on the, like I said, on the ground, things that Kendrick Green struggled with. There's no way in hell he's not the week one starter. And then from there, it's just managing the week to week responsibilities and growing as a player and getting used to, the bigger guys playing over the top of you, those kind of things there. So his outlook, as long as he stays healthy, I think is pretty easy. Just how good can he be as a rookie?
Sure, I'm with you. I mean, just basic stuff. Know the calls, know the playbook, snap the ball well. Let's go back to don't be Kendrick Green, things that Green struggled with, just snapping consistently. But obviously, Frazier, a much more refined product at West Virginia than Green was, who was primarily a guard at Illinois. We can rehash that whole situation there. So just snap the ball well, know the calls. I think the thing with Frazier I want to watch for is some of the zone stuff because he's not a hyper athlete. I think he can do it. I mentioned when they made the pick and before they made the pick that I don't think he's going to limit you schematically, but will he thrive schematically in terms of, climbing to the second level and really trying to make some of those tough reach blocks? We'll see on that. He's capable, technically sound, but I want to see him do it. And then I really want to see him be able to handle some of those big nose tackles, those real strong guys. I thought he, caught too many blocks and didn't always have his hands in the right place in terms of pass protection last year. And go back to Pat Meyer's system. I always talk about that so much, but your centers are more on islands under Pat Meyer. The guards, if they're uncovered, they're typically helping the tackles and pass systems, different systems. The guards might help the centers more often if they're uncovered. In Pittsburgh, they're usually helping the tackles to the inside. That leaves the center 1v1 much more frequently. And so can you anchor? Can you have a good punch and repunch? I think Frazier is all capable of that, but I did think some of those bigger bull rushes, those stronger nose tackles gave him some fits in college, and you'll see a lot of those in the AFC North.
Played slightly over 3,200 offensive snaps throughout his 4 seasons at West Virginia, with most of those obviously coming at the center position. We had a lot of talk about the centers in this draft class leading up to this thing, but pound for pound, as far as the most NFL-ready true center in this class, it was Zach Frazier.
It was 100% Zach Frazier. I know he's going to come in with a great work ethic and great demeanor and awesome for that locker room. No question about that. Kind of a quiet giant. Talk about some of the camp previews in terms of individual matchups to watch when you get to those 1v1 drills, O-line, D-line, late in each practice each day. About Frazier versus Keanu Benton. That's going to be, I think, some really fun marquee matchups.
Yeah, he better get ready for that
club over.
That club, man, because he's gonna see that quite a bit there. And
yeah,
I imagine Cam Hayward might like to take a couple of shots slanting inside to see how he handles a long arm a time or two. But good. Look, iron sharpens iron. Mm-hmm. So that should be fun to watch happen during the training camp.
What kind of matchups will he get to start the year, assuming he does start? He'll see Grady Jarrett week 1, right? Week 2, Denver. Does Denver have a great interior presence? They have Zach Allen, who's kind of more end for them. Just want to get an idea who Frazier might be seeing week 1, assuming he does beat out Herbig.
I
shouldn't say week 1 because I mean there's Jarrett. Do they add somebody else Atlanta did along the D line? Trying to think about Denver, and then from there out the Chargers.
Atlanta up front has Grady Jarrett, David Onyemata.
Okay, the former Saint, right?
Right. So he's gonna get some big bodies there to start the season, and then if you move forward into Denver,
what does Denver have in the middle?
DJ Jones looks like.
Okay. Did he get paid? I'm trying to think about DJ Jones. Did he get a good contract? Or am I might be thinking Justin Jones or something?
I can't remember about DJ.
Anyway, that's probably a rabbit hole to go down for a different time there. About 3? Now he signed a 3-year, $30 million contract with the Broncos in 2022. So there's some pedigree guys there. So good matchups to really test Frazier, assuming he is the week 1 and opening starter for this team. All right, finally here, Pat Freiermuth, and then I think the big thing you look for before training camp, is there an extension? If not during training camp, will there be an extension? If there isn't one by training camp, could he be a hold-in? We haven't really discussed that with him. We've discussed it more with Najee and Cam. I know Freiermuth was asked about a contract during OTAs and dismissed it and said, I'm just focused on football. That's all stuff for my agent to handle. I think he'll probably just go there and work. I don't know if he'll be really a hold-in, but the contract situation is certainly one to watch.
Yeah, it is. That's going to be the main talking point with him moving forward into the start of the season is will he or won't he? And I think they will. It's just a matter of when. Omar'd be smart to get that out of the way. It feels like it's going to be an easy deal to put together for Pat Freiermuth overall. Beyond that, getting into the regular season, you're talking about a guy that played just 12 regular season games as he missed 5 last season, I think, due to that hamstring injury, which obviously landed him on IR for a while. He played just 474 regular season snaps. Registered just 32 receptions for 300 yards and 2 touchdowns on 47 targets. His best game was that game in week 11 against Cincinnati. Caught 9 passes for 120 on 11 targets there. That's the Pat Freiermuth we want to see, especially if they don't go out and add another significant player, if you will, to the wide receiver room. We've talked a couple of times how it's super plausible that Pat Freiermuth could wind up being the second leading pass catcher on this team come season's end behind George Pickens. You imagine, with this offense wanting to run a lot of 2 and 3 tight end personnel groupings, it would put Freiermuth on the field quite a bit. I would imagine first down, third down type situations, getting him the ball, not only getting the ball, but in the middle of the field, whether it be against either zones or man type situations, should be manageable, especially in an offense where you probably want the quarterback to get the football out quick. Aspect of that. I think you look for on third downs. I think one of the things when it comes to Freiermuth, when this rolls back all the way to his rookie season, him coming out of Penn State, a more than adequate blocker out on the move, out in space. I have no issue. Nobody should have any issue with the way Freiermuth gives the effort and goes about trying to get the job done out in space on the move. He's got to become a more dependable blocker when attached to the end of the line of scrimmage. That's going to be one of the big things to look for as he moves into his 4th NFL season. And generally, what you see is what you get at this point. But you have seen some guys in the past kind of bulk it up a little bit and, get a little bit, more overall strength there. We got to see him, whatever it looks like and to what degree, become a little bit better run blocker, especially attached to the line of scrimmage.
I think that's the biggest thing to watch for is in Arthur Smith's system as that inline blocker. How well do you do? It's never been his strength or his strong suit. I know he had a chest injury in week 1 last year, and that probably, not going to help you as a blocker when you're dealing with that, but it's never been his calling card inline. So I really want to watch that, but he should overall benefit from the system and how the team is currently constructed without a number 2 receiver. As you said, should be the second leading receiver as things stand today. I think he'll catch a couple more touchdowns than what he did last year. This team just in general should be throwing more touchdowns than the 25 they've had over the last 2 years combined. Could they get creative with him? Not only could Freiermuth be statistically the number 2 receiver, could he align as an outside receiver sometimes? I wonder if that's going to be on the table for a team that's going to probably deploy. Because you can deploy 12 personnel, but you can do that and dress it up in 10 different ways. Could you put him out there and split him out wide and have Washington as your inline guy? They've messed with that sometimes. They've done some 3-by-1 looks with him backside to create some, potential fade ball matchups. And I wonder if they're going to lean into that more. Not only, have him be the de facto number 2 in terms of targets and volume and activity in the offense, but in terms of how he aligns, will he be split out more and kind of function in that role? I think he could.
Yeah, I think you can, and I think you will see that at times, especially depending on the defensive packages that roll out, and how you maybe widen up some of these splits or even widen them out. Maybe not all the way to the numbers, but close to the number. Yeah, you can have some fun with him doing that there. Look, going back to kind of real quick on the blocking aspect, years ago, Bill Belichick talked about tight ends and especially during the times where he used 2 or 3 of them in a lot of 12 personnel groupings and all like that. He wasn't exactly expecting them all to be Rob Gronkowski. I think somewhere there's a quote floating around, just it goes along the lines of the do your job, just don't get blown up and get in the way of some guys. You can be an adequate enough blocker without registering 7 pancakes a year.
Sure.
So that's especially when you have guys in some split zone situations, man, just get across there and don't get blown up, get in the way of somebody in situations where you're asked to cut on the inner line. Just do enough, and it's fun to go back to hear Bill Belichick talk about some of the tight ends he's had in the past that weren't household names and definitely not known as road grading blockers, if you will.
Yeah, I'm going to use this phrase, and I think I forget where I originally saw it. I think it's probably used for other situations than inline blocking by tight end, but I'll kind of use it for Freiermuth, the phrase "die slowly" as a blocker. Like, don't get blown up. Don't let this guy cross your face immediately off the ball and blow up a play and get penetration and totally change the track. And you just kind of hold on and run your feet and make life tough on that defender to try to work off of you and then try to make the tackle and find the football. If he can just kind of die slowly as a run blocker, when you have a couple of guys that should be able to do that well in Darnell Washington, you can probably live with that way.
I agree.
All right, Dave, I think that'll conclude our 90 and 30 for this episode. We'll do a couple more on the Friday show. So to close things out, Dave, let's get through some reader emails and close out today's show.
Let's see what we got in the email machine here. Let's start with Jason Chadwell, longtime listener, first-time emailer from Cleveland, Ohio. Hello, Cleveland, as they say in Spinal Tap. Welcome, Jason.
Hey, Jason.
Been listening to the show for 10 years. Best Steelers coverage out there. Question: although Deshaun Elliott has not taken a snap for the black and gold, who is a better complement to Minkah? Elliott or Terrell Edmunds? Minka's all-pro seasons came with Edmunds. Wondering if Elliott is an upgrade over what Edmunds was in his time in Pittsburgh. Thank you and keep up the excellent work. How would you go about answering a potential comparison of Terrell Edmunds versus Deshaun Elliott, sight unseen of Elliott in the Steelers defense, and thinking that we know how Minkah is going to be used?
Yeah, in terms of compliment, I mean, that kind of goes back to their chemistry, and it's really hard to answer that without watching Fitzpatrick and Elliott play. I think Elliott, if you made me choose who's the better safety, I would give it a slight edge to Elliott. I think it's better, more rangier safety, a bit more apt in coverage than Edmunds was. But I mean, what Edmunds and Minkah had was really important. Their chemistry, they worked together really well. Edmunds was that kind of prototypical, defined, strong safety. So there is a pretty, might be funny to say, but kind of a high bar for Elliott to set just because those two paired and played off each other so well. I think they could do it, Elliott and Fitzpatrick, but it may take a little bit of time because, Edmunds is always available and durable and out there for every single rep in practice and game. And so that continuity helped. So there's going to be some ground to make up for Elliott to get there.
Yeah, and it's a good question, Jason. Creative question there. For sure. I would say maybe 1-for-1 from what I know about Elliott so far, and obviously watching Edmunds all those years. I think 1-for-1, they're comparable down low in the box and against the run. I think they're super comparable there. I think from the versatility aspect, though, because Elliott has played some free safety and has made some plays. Just the ability he gives you in some situations where you might want to do some things with some rotation and maybe put him as the guy rotating back. I think that's where he would potentially stack up better than Edmunds. So I think just what we know about Elliott to date and how we think he's going to fit in versus the way Edmunds was used and his abilities in Pittsburgh, I would give the advantage to Elliott.
Yeah, I mean, again, I think it's like when it's like two offensive linemen, coming together. The talent they have to be more than the sum of their parts, and that comes with some time and some chemistry and continuity. And those things can be tough to judge out of the box. But Elliott, he knows his job. He's a veteran. He knows AFC North ball overall, being in Baltimore for several seasons. So I think they'll work well. I think it'll be a similar fit between Elliott and Fitzpatrick as it was Edmunds and Fitzpatrick. but it really is kind of one of those things where just time will tell. And it's also just, can they stay healthy? If they're someone's hurt and out of the lineup, then it's hard to build that chemistry, obviously. So that factor plays in as well.
Look, it's very important that both those guys stay healthy throughout the rest of this summer so they can get as much time communicating and feeling and knowing where each other's going to be and understanding what's expected out of each other in certain situations and timing some of those rotations whenever they happen and all like that. So the biggest part of the offseason when it comes to those two moving forward into the start of training camp is, man, you want to hear about those two guys staying healthy and being out there and working together as much as possible so they can get whatever might need to be ironed out before week one.
And Pittsburgh's not really had that the last couple of camps. I mean, 2 camps ago, Minkah started the year on NFI because he got hurt vacationing. Last year, he had, I think, a bereavement issue, and then Casey had gotten hurt. They got a bunch of safety injuries last year. I know Casey was gone for a couple of weeks. I think Neal had gotten hurt. Minkah was gone for the first week and a half or so. So, obviously hope those guys could be out there day one and hit the ground running.
Here's an interesting from one from James Susanelli. Familiar. He's emailed in quite a few times over the years. Najee Harris versus Austin Ekeler. All right. Why do we want to pay $9 to $10 million per year for Harris when Austin Ekeler only signed for $5.5 million or so per year? Who would you really rather have? Eckler's stats are great, he writes. I'm not saying in a one-on-one situation. I agree Najee should get more than Ramondre Stevenson, he says. But I think the Steelers might be trying to be playing smart money. Let Najee and James Daniels walk, he says, after the season, and they get some good compensation, the compensatory picks, possibly the following year. So I guess at his core is he's saying, why would you pay Najee Harris $9 to $10 million a year when a guy like Austin Ekeler only signed for $5.5 million or so? The way I begin answering that question would probably not be a popular one, and that would be that you're not going to be able to sign Najee Harris for $5.5 million per year. At least I don't think you're going to be able to. I think Najee would be absolutely foolish for taking such a contract. Now, Austin Ekeler, Austin's been a very capable running back. He's a little bit undersized. He has been kind of nicked up along the way, and he is a little bit older at this point as well, too. So it's the whole supply, demand, market value kind of things. And did Austin maybe sell himself short? Did he leave a little? Could he have gotten more had he held out a little bit longer to see what happens during preseason? I don't know. But I will say this, and I wrote about this again because this morning, because the Ramondre Stevenson contract details, all of it finally came out this morning. I wrote up what that contract looks like in comparison with kind of the contract that I laid out a couple of weeks ago as a projection for Najee Harris and all like that. To me, it feels like at least what I laid out for Najee seems like a very fair deal. I get all the pushback here from people that say, hey, no way in hell do I want to pay Najee Harris $9 to $10 million per year. Let him play out this year and then see what happens after that. If he walks, he walks. You got a young guy in Jaylen Warren's going to get a lot of work this season. Just understanding the fungibility overall of the running back position. I get all of that. Trust me, I do. I get the pushback here. However, if you are going to get Najee signed this offseason, look for that deal to be between $9 and $10 million a year in the story. I don't think that you can throw it out there, a deal like Austin Ekeler's for $5.5 million or so, but I don't think you're going to get it signed.
Yeah, and I don't know if that was Jason who sent that email? James. I'm sorry. James had sent that in. I think his point was kind of to the fungibility argument of, can you just go sign somebody cheaper and get equivalent production? And that's always going to be the back and forth discussion on, and Ekeler in particular. I don't know if he was arguing for him or just kind of a placeholder name. I know Ekeler, one reason why he didn't go back to the Chargers was the Chargers said, like, we want a guy who can be handle a heavy workload. And that's not really Eckler's game. I know Pittsburgh's running more of a committee approach, not quite the workhorse back that Harris was his rookie year, or the heydays of James Conner, Le'Veon Bell. But I don't know if Eckler would have been really a great fit for kind of the more power demanding tasks that Pittsburgh is asking their backs to do this year. But in terms of just general, do you want to pay the running back position? Or do you just want to kind of make it fungible and find somebody new? I mean, that just goes back to the endless kind of discussion and debate about it. If you build up the offensive line, the running back's going to matter less. So point taken on that overall. But I do think Pittsburgh has a type of running back they're looking for. They want a guy with some size and power, and to like their backs big. And so you got to try to find those guys, which isn't always the easiest thing to do. I don't think a guy like Eckler is really a great kind of fit for the values that Pittsburgh wants in the position.
Did we get this the other day from this came in? I think we did from Ryan Kane. He agreed with Najee the whole time. He says how important was the last 2 games of last season, especially. Okay, we hit that one. I think I got one more in here, maybe from Bryce. He says, okay, so we ranked the guard tandems in the AFC North, and that got me to thinking, how would you both currently rank the AFC North inside linebacker rooms, assuming Cole Holcomb is healthy and ready in training camp? How would you rank the AFC North in line off the ball linebacker rooms right now? Let's see. You got the Ravens, and obviously they have Roquan Smith and Trenton Simpson as their top 2. Cincinnati, they have they got
some different systems. 4-3-3.
You're getting into you got Jermaine Pratt and Logan Wilson, who's a formidable group over there, and I guess he's kind of ranked all top to bottom. I mean, entire depth chart, because they got Akeem Davis Gaither and looks like Joe Bachie behind those 2. Cleveland, who does Cleveland got now off the ball? JOK. I'm always worried about that kind of JOK holding up the physicality. And I think those concerns are legitimate right now, kind of keeping himself on the field. They also have Jordan Hicks over there. A couple of really no names behind those guys, I think, overall. I don't know. Just off the cuff, I'd probably go, I don't know. Oh boy. It's not knowing how the other team's depth chart's going. He's wanting us to take the full rooms though. What's your thoughts on that?
Yeah, again, lines get a little blurry when you're talking inside linebacker, outside linebacker, or 4-3 versus 3-4. I really still like what the Bengals have done with Logan Wilson, Jermaine Pratt. I think right now they'd still be my number 1 just based on what they've done. I think Pittsburgh could get to that top spot. Roquan Smith, one of the top off-ball linebackers, probably him and Fred Warner. But what do you have beyond that after losing Patrick Queen? Trenton Simpson, he'll have to step in. I think I'd answer it this way. I'd go Cincinnati, Pittsburgh, Baltimore, and then Cleveland as my ranking.
I think I definitely would put Cleveland last. I think I would definitely put Cincinnati probably first, and then I'd say an outright tie maybe between Baltimore and Pittsburgh.
Yeah, I mean, it just depends. Can Queen be the same Queen he was without Roquan Smith? I mean, if Trenton Simpson steps up and he's plays at a Queen level, then Baltimore is probably first, because you got Roquan Smith, who's an elite level guy. It's just kind of a question of what else do they have and how strong is their depth overall. They got, I think Malik Harrison played a little bit in that week 18 game last year against Pittsburgh. So, but in terms of just kind of off-ball linebacker positions, I will go with Wilson and Pratt, number 1.
Okay. All right. Fair enough. All right. I think we got through several of the questions that we had in the email back there. So anything else we need to add before we get out of here? What's going up on the site today? Like I said, I Not long ago, before we got started here, I posted about the Ramondre Stevenson contract breakdown versus Najee Harris proposal. If you are into that type of thing and like reading that stuff, have at it. If you don't, you won't hurt my feelings. There's a lot of math and numbers in that. Alex has his kind of a video up on Elandon Roberts that we covered earlier in the show that you'll definitely want to get by to see. Let's see. We've got Alex is running a worst gaffes Steelers series, and it was fun. I got to contribute, remind everybody of a few of them that I think Alex will be writing about throughout this kind of short series here that might entertain. What else is up on the site? Alex, the 90 and 30 series goes up every morning with 3 new names on it. What else should the people be on the lookout for?
Yeah, I'm working through my deconstructing the roster and giving roster odds. We're almost at the top of the guys who are near locks or locks to make this team. Got an interesting take and article from Matthew Marks. He's done some really good work over the last couple weeks, especially on Mason McCormick and his outlook and how that could have ripple effects on the rest of the roster in terms of decisions on Spencer Anderson and the future of James Daniels and the future currently and next year for Herbig. So some good content there, and we'll find some more things to talk about and write about until the rest of the day and throughout the week. And of course, hopefully everyone has a healthy and happy 4th of July. And let's hope all Steelers keep all their fingers. That's always something you're watching for this time of year, but should be good. And Dave, hopefully you have a good 4th as well.
Yeah, I'm staying home. Put it in reverse, Terry. Everybody put it in reverse. Stay safe with all those fireworks and all like that. Alex, we did it. 90 minutes today. Wow. Somehow, some way, I think we were able to get this. Can you win a Grammy for a podcast?
We'll submit it. We'll see if it gets accepted. Don't think it will.
I don't think it will either. But what other awards can you win for a podcast episode?
There are
for
podcast
a single
awards.
Episode.
I mean, there's probably podcast award shows out there, right? I don't know. I'm sure there's something out there. The People's Choice Podcast Awards. Apparently, that's a thing. So,
all right,
submit us.
All right. I don't think we'll win, but if anything should be a candidate. Getting 90 minutes carved out today should at least give us an honorable mention there. So we will be back on Friday. We'll see what happens between now and then. As usual, you can follow me on Twitter/X at Steelers Depot. Follow Alex at Alex_Kozora. Follow the show at Terrible Podcast. Email the show, theterriblepodcast@gmail.com. We need some first timers in that email machine. Perfect time to answer a lot of questions. So any first timers out there, feel free to drop us an email question there. theterriblepodcast@gmail.com. If you like what we do and want to donate to the cause, SteelersDepot.com. Hit the donate button up right navigation bar. Also, if you like an ad-free version of the site, hit the ad-free button. Follow the directions that way. For $25 for 1 calendar year, you can have an ad-free version of Steelers Depot. So until Friday, as always, thanks for listening to the Terrible Podcast with Dave and Alex.